Welcome to my channel. In the previous video, we have seen the exempted incomes. So this is a continuation of the same chapter, that is income from salary. In this video, we'll be learning the partly exempted and partly taxable incomes as well as the valuation of perquisites. Kindly watch the video till the end, like it, share among your friends and subscribe the channel. If you already subscribed the channel, kindly ignore. If you have any comments, please put your comments in the comment box. Now, let's move to the presentation. So, the death cum retirement gratuity here. So, this is an exempted, partly exempted and partly taxable income under section 10, subsection 10 here. So, first let's understand what is gratuity here. Gratuity, the word gratuity is derived from the word gratitude, which shows the respect to the work done by the employee in the past years. Gratuity means the lump sum amount received by the employees either on the death or on retirement. So if it is on the death, the legal heirs of the employees, they will receive the gratuity here. So here the employees are treated, classified into two categories. One is a government employee and a non-government employee. Government employee, if any government employee who receives a gratuity, then the entire amount of the gratuity is fully exempted from the tax here. So here the government employee includes the employees of the central as well as the state government departments and as well as the semi-governments here, like local bodies here. So any amount of the gratuity received by the government employee is fully exempted from the tax. Now let's move to the non-government employee. Again, here the employees are classified into two categories, that is employees covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act of 1972 and employees who are not covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act of 1972 here. Here the employee who is covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act here, so the organization should have at least 20% or more on permanent basis here. In such case, such employees are covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act of 1972 here. So how much shall be exempted here? So now let us see here, least of maximum of rupees 20 lakhs or actually gratuity received, or 15 days salary by taking 26 days as working days in a month for completed years of service and any part thereof exceeding 6 months based on the last salary drawn preceding the month of retirement year. Here 26 days is taken because 4 Sundays are excluded here. So 4 Sundays are excluded, so that's why we should take 26 days as working days in a month here for completed years of service and any part thereof exceeding 6 months. Suppose if there is a fraction of service, like for example, if it is a 32 years and 8 months, then the complete years of service will be 33 years. If it is, say for example, 32 years and 5 months, the completed years of service will be 32 years. And we should take the salary the preceding the month in which he retires from the service here. So that salary should be taken here. So maximum of rupees 20 lakhs or the actual gratuity received, or 15 by 26 into completed years of service after considering the fractional services multiplied by the last salary drawn by the employee here. So here a salary means basic salary plus a DA if it enters into retirement benefit, plus commission if it is based on the fixed percentage of the turnover during the year. Now the gratuity received by the employees who are not covered under the Payment of Gratuity Act of 1972 here. So here an organization will be having less than 20% as the strength of the such organization here. So here in this case, the least of maximum of rupees 20 lakhs or actual gratuity received or half month's average salary for each completed years of service here. Here average salary for this purpose is calculated on the basis of the 10 months preceding the month in which the gratuity was received here. So half month's average salary here. Again the salary means here basic plus DA if it enters into a term benefit plus commission if it is based on the fixed percentage of the turnover achieved by the employee during the previous year. So here we should take 10 months salary preceding the month in which the gratuity was received. Suppose if the gratuity is received in the month of December, so we should take what was his salary in the last 10 months, right, from starting from February to November, that we should take in this example. So half of that we should take. So whichever is the least among these three, that is exempted from the tax here. Now, commutation of pension under section 10 subsection 10a here. Here pension means the periodical payment made to the employee after his retirement. So in the post-retirement life, almost the employee has all discharged his personal responsibilities like marrying of his daughter, or maybe like education of his children, everything probably it will be completed. So here in such case he does not need amount, say for example of the pension here. So he may go for commutation of such pension. So commutation of pension means a lump sum amount is received by a retiring employee after surrendering the whole or some portion of his pension. Say for example, if the employee's pension is fixed, assume that say for example 70,000 or 60,000 like that. In such case he may not require that 60,000 to lead his post-retirement life. He may sacrifice a part of that, say for example 1/3 he may sacrifice, or 2/3 he may commute, or 75% he may commute, or 25% he may commute, right? So for sacrificing a lump sum amount is received. Such a lump sum amount is nothing but what we call it as the commutation of pension. So now let us see the tax treatment. Again, for this purpose the employees are broadly classified into two categories, that is a government employee and a non-government employee. So in case of the government employee, any amount of commuted value pension received by the government employee is fully exempted from the tax here. Whereas in case of the non-government employee, if the employee receives gratuity also, then 1/3 of commuted value of full pension is exempted. Whereas if the employee does not receive gratuity, half of the commuted value of full pension is exempted from the tax here. So here, for example, if an employee who commutes 1/3 of his pension and receives rupees 3 lakhs, so we need to calculate the what is his, suppose has he commuted full pension, so what would have been received by him. So in that case here, in this example what we have taken now, 3 lakhs is received, so for commutation of 1/3, so we should calculate first commuted value of full pension. For example, if 1/3 is commuted and 3 lakhs is received, so for commutation of 1/3, 3 lakh is received. Suppose for full commutation it will be 9 lakhs in that case here. So 1/3 of that computed value of full pension is exempt if he receives gratuity also. If he does not receive gratuity, half of the computed value of full pension is exempt from the tax here. Now let us go for the next one here, that is encashment of earned leave or leave salary here. So an employee can avail various types of leaves like casual leaves or earned leaves. Casual leaves cannot be encashed, and if such casual leaves are not enjoyed by the employee, it will be lapsed, and always these casual leaves are provided for 1 calendar year. Whereas earned leave means these leaves, if they are not availed by the employee, they get accumulated and they can be surrendered and a lump sum amount can be received. So here surrender of leaves or encashment of earned leave means if the accumulated leaves are surrendered at the end of the retirement and any payment is received by surrendering such leaves is what is called as encashment of leave or earned leave here. So now let us see the tax treatment. So it is under two situations here. Surrender of leave may take place during the service or it may take at the end of the service. If the surrender of the leaves takes place during the service here, irrespective of the type of the employee, that is a government employee or non-government employee, the entire amount of the surrender of leave is fully chargeable to tax. Then if the surrender of if the earned leave is received at the time of retirement here, in such case the employees are classified into two categories, that is government employee and non-government employee. In case of the government employee, any amount received by way of surrender of leave is fully exempted from the tax here. In case of the non-government employee, list of actual amount received or average salary for the past 10 months, then rupees 3 lakhs as notified, leave at the credit of 30 days per annum for every completed years of service based on the average salary for the past 10 months. Here average salary means the salary received in the month of retirement is considered as the average salary, provided if such salary remains the same in the past 10 months preceding the month of his retirement. Suppose if there is a variation in the salary, then we need to calculate the average salary here. Then the next one comes here, various funds are comes like this. We have got a statutory provident fund, public provident fund, then unrecognized provident fund, superannuation fund. There are 5 types of funds here. So now let us understand these funds one by one here. So you can easily make notes of this video also. So here statutory provident fund means it is a fund set up under the provisions of the Provident Fund Act of 1925 here. It is maintained by the government, semi-government, university and other educational institutions here. So such a fund is what is called as a statutory provident fund here. While recognized provident fund means any fund or scheme to which employs a Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1952 are applicable. Any establishment which is having 20 or more is covered by the Recognized Provident Fund Act here. And then unrecognized fund. So here it is a fund which is created as per mutual agreement set by the employer and the trade union. And if such fund is not recognized, if such a scheme is not recognized by the Commissioner of Income Tax, it is called as unrecognized provident fund here. Then the next one comes here, public provident fund here. Here it is a fund which is set up by the central government for the benefit of the general public to mobilize a personal savings. Any member of the public can participate, whether it is a salary or other assessee can participate in such a fund here by opening a provident fund account with the State Bank of India or its subsidiaries or any other nationalized banks or even the post office. A minimum of rupees 500 and a maximum of rupees 1,50,000 per annum can be deposited in this account here, and such amount is not withdrawable till the 15 years. In other to say, the maturity will be 15 years. However, after completion of 8 years, the amount can be prematured here, and this the accumulated balance of this fund can be accepted as a collateral security for getting loans from the banks here. Then the next one comes here, superannuation fund here. It is a retirement fund offered by the employer. The employer contributes 15% of salary here. It is mandatory for it is not mandatory for an employee to contribute. There is a correction here. It is not mandatory for an employee to contribute here. And usually, if any recognized fund, if it is continuously to be recognized for more than 10 years or 15 years, then automatically the RPF will be converted into superannuation fund here. So now let us discuss the treatment, the tax treatment of contribution toward this fund, any interest credited to this fund, and amount or refund received from this fund here in the next slide here. Yeah. So the tax treatment of the various funds here. So if the amount is contributed by employee towards a statutory provident fund, it qualifies for deduction section 80C. So it is deductible from his total income while computing the taxable income here. Then similarly, contribution by the employee towards recognized provident, that will also qualify for deduction section 80C here. Whereas contribution made by the employee towards unrecognized provident fund does not qualify for deduction section 80C here. The contribution made by employee towards recognized provident fund qualifies for deduction section 80C, while a contribution made by employee towards unrecognized provident fund does not qualify for deduction section 80C here. And whereas a contribution by the employee by the assessee towards a public provident fund also qualifies for deduction section 80C, then a contribution made by the employee towards superannuation fund that qualifies for deduction section 80C. Then employer's contribution towards the statutory provident fund is exempted from the tax, while contribution made by employer towards a recognized provident fund in excess of 12% of the salary of the employee is chargeable to tax. And the contribution made by employer towards unrecognized provident fund is also exempt from the tax. In case of PPF, employer will not contribute. Then in case of superannuation fund, contribution made by the employer also qualifies for deduction section 80C. Then interest credited to statutory provident fund is exempt from the tax, whereas interest credited to recognized provident fund in excess of 9.5% is chargeable to tax here. Then interest credited on the employee's portion of contribution is chargeable tax under the head of income from other sources, whereas interest credited on employer's portion of contribution is chargeable to income from salary, that is interest credited to URPF. Then interest credited to PPF is exempt from the tax. Interest credited to superannuation fund is also exempt from the tax. Then on the retirement, the amount received from the statutory provident fund is exempt from the tax, whereas the amount received from the recognized provident fund on the maturity is also exempt from the tax, whereas in case of unrecognized provident fund, amount received which is a contribution of the employee is exempt, while employer's portion of contribution is chargeable to tax under the head of income from salary. Then amount received from PPF is also exempt, and amount received from superannuation fund is also exempt. So we need to give much concentration on the recognized provident fund here. So contribution by employer towards RPF in excess of 12% of the salary is chargeable tax. Interest credited to RPF in excess of 9.5% is chargeable to tax here. Now let us go for house rent allowance under section 10 subsection 13A. Here, any allowance received by the employee to meet the rental expenditure of the house of the employee is called as house rent allowance. It can be received by both the government employee as well as non-government employee. The tax treatment for both of them remains same. If the employee is staying in his own house, the HRA received by him is a fully chargeable tax. In case if the employee resides in a rented house, it is exempted to the extent of the least of actual HRA received, rent paid in excess of 10% of the salary of the employee, 50% of the salary of the employee if the house is situated in cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, New Delhi and Chennai. In case of rest of the cities, it is 40% of the salary. Now let's go for the perquisites here. So first let's understand what is this perquisite here. Perquisite is nothing but any casual emolument or benefit attached to an office or position of an employee in addition to the salary is called as a perquisite here. So such perquisite may be provided in the form of cash or kind. Usually perquisites are provided in kind. If it is given in kind here, then it is to be converted into monetary value. So that is what is called as a valuation of perquisite here. Such perquisites can be broadly classified into three categories: perquisites taxable in case of all types of employees, perquisites taxable in case of specified employees or specified assessees, perquisites taxable in case of all types of assessees here. So now let us go by one here. Valuation of rent-free accommodation. It is taxable perquisite in case of all types of employee. That means whether the employee is a specified employee or not specified employee here. When a residential accommodation is provided to employees at a free of cost, it is called it is known as a value of rent-free accommodation. So for this purpose, employees are classified into two categories: government employees and non-government employees. In case of government employees, value shall be the license fee or the rent amount as fixed by the concerned department of the government. That will be the value. In case of non-government employee, again it is discussed under two heads, that is One is accommodation owned by the employer, and when accommodation is taken on lease or on rental basis. When accommodation is owned by the employer, in such case 7.5% of the salary of the employee is taken as the value if the accommodation is provided in a city having less than 10 lakh population. It can be taken, the value shall be 10% of the salary if the accommodation is provided in a city having more than 10 lakh population but less than 25 lakh population. Then it is 25% of the salary of the employee, 15% of the salary of the employee if the accommodation is provided in a city having more than 25 lakh population. Here salary means basic plus DA if it enters into retirement benefit, plus commission whether it is based on lump sum basis or on fixed percentage on the turnover, plus bonus, commission, plus all other taxable allowances. So that is the meaning of salary for this purpose here. Then if the accommodation is hired by the employer, or if the house is not owned by the employer, then in such case value of rent free furnished house will be the least of rent paid by employer or 15% of the salary of the employee, whichever is less is considered as the value of accommodation. Here 15% should not be confused with the earlier 15%. It is irrespective of the size of the population of the city, it should be taken as 15% of salary if the accommodation is not owned by the employer. Then value of furnished house. Value of furnished house is nothing but the value of unfurnished house plus 10% of the cost of furniture or higher charges as the case may be here. Here furniture, that means accommodation also may provided along with the furniture here. Furniture such as it includes all the modern home appliances here, like refrigerator, color TV, or it may be like washing machine, or it may be like a dishwasher, or MP3 music sound system, etc. All these together it is called as furniture here. And then sometimes the employer may recover certain amount of rent from the employee's salary. Then it is called as value of house or value of accommodation at concessional rent. In case if the accommodation is provided in a hotel here, in such case the value shall be taken as a 24% of the salary of the employee as a value of accommodation. Now perquisites taxable in case of all types of employees. We have discussed the first two here. Obligations of the employee met by employer. Here these are the personal expenditure of the employee, but they are paid by employer. So as they are paid by employer, here it shall be considered the salary of the employee. So it is the perquisite, taxable perquisite here, such as it may be like income tax, or it may be life insurance premium of employee may be paid by employer on behalf of his employee. Then club bill, hotel bill. Suppose if the employee is a member of any health club or prestigious clubs like Country Club or Mahindra Club, etc. So if the club bill, like it may be like a membership fees which are paid by employer on behalf of the employee, that is chargeable to tax here. Then value of free domestic servants. If these servants are engaged or employed by the employer, and if they are working at the residence of the employee, in such case it is value of free domestic servants. If here domestic servants means it may be like a gardener, or it may be like a cook, or it may be like a watchman, or maybe sweeper. Then credit card facility here. So if any amount of the credit card bill is paid here, then even that is taxable perquisite in the hands of all types of employees. Now let us see the perquisites taxable in case of a specified employees. First let's understand who is a specified employer. A specified employee is one who is an employee director. That means he is working as employee, along with that he is holding the position of a director in such an organization. Or a person having a substantial interest. Here substantial interest means a person who is one who has more than 20 who has got more than 21% voting right. Such person will be called as the employee, specified employee here. So or whose gross salary is more than 50,000 rupees. So after allowing the reduction section 16, such an employee will be called as a specified employee here. So in case of the specified employee, the perquisites such as the value of car, value of free domestic servants, or value of gas, water, electricity, or free education, all they are taxable only in the hands of specified employees. Now let us discuss these things here. Value of motor car. Here the car may be provided by the employer to the employee either for his office use or personal use, sometimes or for both. The car may be used for both private and official purposes. So car provided by the employee which is of more than 1.6 liters here, owned by the employer. It is wrongly typed as employee. Owned by the employer. In such case, all the expenses are met by the employer. Value of car is at rupees 2,400 per month plus 900 rupees per month as a driver salary if a driver is also provided. If it is owned by the employer less than of 16 HP and all expenses are met by the employer, including a driver salary, and car is used for both for private purpose as well as a personal purpose, then private as well as official purpose, then the value of car will be rupees 1,800 per month plus 900 per month as driver salary here. If the car is used for exclusively for official purpose, then the value shall be taken as nil. If the car is used for only private purpose, then the actual expenditure met by the employer is taken as the value of the car here. Then the value of domestic servants here. Here the employer may provide or he may ask the employee to appoint the domestic servants, and the wages will be either reimbursed or they will be paid by the employer. So if domestic servants are appointed at the residence of the employee, the actual wages paid by employer will be taxable. If any amount is recovered by the employer from the employee's salary, the same shall be reduced from such value. If the employer has provided own accommodation, then in such case gardener's salary is not separately taxable, as the garden and the accommodation cannot be detached from each other. Then next one comes here, value of gas, water and electricity. Actual expenditure paid by the employer is the value of perquisite if it is supplied from other sources. If these sources are supplied from own source, then in such case the cost of manufacturing per unit is chargeable to tax here. Then the next one comes here, value of free education. Here the actual fees paid by the employer is chargeable to tax here. If the education is provided in an employer's own institution, cost up to 1,000 rupees per month per child is exempt from the tax. If the cost exceeds rupees 1,000, in such case cost of education in similar school reduced by rupees 1,000 per month per child is chargeable to tax here. Then if any amount is recovered from the employee's salary towards free education is to be deducted from the value of education here. Then now let us see the tax-free perquisites. These are the perquisites. The value of such perquisites is not at all taxable here. So they are like this: tea or snacks or similar non-alcoholic beverages provided during office hours. This is totally exempt from the tax. Then cost of free meal, if such cost of the meal does not exceed rupees 50. Suppose if the cost of free meal is 75 rupees, then 25 rupees per meal is a chargeable tax. Then a free ration to armed personnel. Suppose, say for example, the CSD facility provided to the armed personnel such as Army, Navy, Air Force. So in such case that is totally exempt from the tax here. Then conveyance facility provided to cover the distance between the office and the house. So that is also exempted here. Then medical facility, that is, say for example, the treatment may be given in a government hospital, or say for example the treatment may be given in a hospital owned by employer or a government owned hospital employer or in a private clinic. Either the expenditure or the reimbursement of such medical bills is totally exempt from the tax here. And the cost of the periodical and the journal required for discharge of the work. Suppose, say for example, a person is working as a software engineer and who needs books and journals with respect to the software development, etc. So the cost of such books or periodicals is totally exempt from the tax here. Then the cost of telephone, mobile facility used for office as well as a personal purpose is totally exempt from the tax here. Then provision of computer or laptop facility either at the residence of the house or at the office So both are exempted from the tax here. Then rent-free accommodation provided to an official parliament. Say suppose if the accommodation is provided to the officers who are working for in the parliament here, then that is also exempted from the tax here. Then gift in kind is exempted up to rupees 5,000, while a gift check or gift in cash is fully taxable. Suppose say for example if 100 rupees is given as a gift here, in such case that 100 rupees is chargeable to tax here. Thank you for watching this video.